felt good about being able to be around these guys and to try new things. His brain spun like a merry-go-round. Frank couldn't hold a thought in his head. If he tried, Frank couldn't hold a thought in his head if he tried. He hoped he'd be done. He hoped he'd done everything that he needed to do, but he couldn't be sure of it. In this moment, he wasn't sure of anything. His mind fell on Gail for a brief moment. Oh, hadn't she been hurt enough? Her mother died when she was a child, and she was raised by an abusive aunt. When she married Frank, she was a wreck. She didn't have a penny to her name, and she couldn't think for herself. Regret seized Frank like a thief in the middle of the night, but it was nothing he could do about it now. Frank was on his back, laying on something soft. The room was cold as a January morning in North Dakota. Frank was sweating like a field hand. The woman standing over him was sure to know that he was getting cold feet. She dabbed at his face with a soft cloth. He tried to remember her name, but couldn't. Is this your first time? The woman said. She smiled sweetly and pressed the cloth to his left cheek. My name is Eva, she said. Eva, he said softly, reaching for her. She took his hand in hers and rubbed it gently. She was different from any other woman he'd known. He was attracted to her the moment he saw her emerge from the funeral home's beveled doors earlier that morning. She was dressed in soft pink. Black curls framed her smooth peanut butter brown face. When she told him to follow her, he did so with pleasure. In the small room, Frank lay as still as possible, trying to control his breathing. He had no idea being in a casket would upset him so. The only thing that settled him was that Alice and those 3 bastard kids of hers wouldn't get a penny of his money. You'll be able to hear everything, Eva said. She laid his hand on his chest. Did you bring everything you were asked to bring? Everything is in my briefcase on the table, Frank said after clearing his throat. Eva left his side immediately. He watched as she examined the contents of the briefcase. He hoped he remembered everything. When she returned, he said, Bill said you would discuss the risks. Oh, there are no risks unless... Her voice stopped abruptly. She rested her hands on the sides of the casket. Unless you have failed to follow all of the instructions. Frank took a deep breath. He tried to lift himself but couldn't. Eva placed her hand on his chest to try and settle him. Frank rested on the soft pillow beneath him. It took him months, but this plan had come together so far. When Bill heard that Alice was ready to announce publicly that Frank was the father of her 3 kids, he suggested that Frank come to the slumber chamber. Frank did as Bill suggested. All he had to do was follow a simple process. Eva would call his wife. Bill would drain all of his accounts, transferring the monies to offshore accounts owned solely by Frank's new identity, Terrence Weaver. And by the time the little tramp went public with her announcement, the news of his death would outweigh her little statement. He savored the thought of the little wench's face when she realized that she and her 3 kids would be slumming it for the rest of their lives. I followed the instructions, Frank said with a satisfied grin. He thought of how upset Gail would be when she received Eva's call. Bill would probably show up just as she was getting off the phone. Frank figured that Bill would be there throughout the entire grieving process. He smiled as he imagined what the press coverage of his death would be like. Probably a series of pictures of Gail weeping while Bill holds her hand. Frank had no sensible reason to hate Gail. She did everything he said. Never questioned him. She wouldn't even argue with him. What he hated was her perfection. It was like a whip that constantly dealt lashes of guilt on his back. He was the bad one. Even in the press photos, Frank looked like a big bad wolf, while little Miss Gail looked like Goldilocks. Have you called my wife? Frank asked. I left a message for her. A message? Frank's voice was frantic. He bolted upright. Eva rushed to him. Where in the hell was she? Gail should have answered her phone. Frank hadn't called, texted, or emailed her in 3 days. She should have been answering that damn phone on the first ring. His pulse quickened. He felt a panic attack coming. Eva was by his side, gently pushing him back down on the soft pillow. Calm down, Eva said. Her face was filled with worry. Don't worry, she'll call back in a moment. Frank lay back on the pillow. His body was still, tense. Gail should have been worried about her. Where was she? What the hell was she doing that she couldn't answer the damn phone? You have got to calm down, Eva said. Then her phone rang. Frank hoped it was Gail. He needed this plan to work. He would rid himself of Alice and those kids of hers, and he would be done with Gail. Frank didn't wish Gail any harm. He just had no more use for her. 20 years ago, when he was first starting out, he needed a beautiful young bride who would do as she was told. It helped his image. Now that he'd made his millions, he simply didn't need her anymore. Yes, Mrs. Dodderly, Eva said into the phone as she left the room. When she returned, she smiled at Frank and said, your wife has been notified. Then for the next 5 minutes, her hands was all over him. She removed his wallet, cell phone, and a very hefty check from his breast pocket. Is that it, Mr. Donnelly? Eva asked, patting him down. That's it. You wouldn't lie to me now, would you? A small trail of laughter followed her remark. Scout's honor. Frank raised his right hand. No lies here. There are lies, Mr. Donnelly, even in death, she said. Then came the shot. Frank tried to move, but he couldn't. His body felt like it weighed over a ton. He couldn't even feel his heart beating. He was beginning to think that he was really dead. He tried to breathe, but he couldn't. All he saw was darkness. He tried to picture the rows of plush burgundy chairs that lined the small room. He wondered where Gail would sit, probably in the front row, probably right in the front, in the front of him, in tears. If his lips were not numb, he would have laughed when he thought of how quickly those pretty little tears will dry up when she found out that she was penniless. She'd probably dress in some black dress that fit her curves and accentuated her bosom. He heard a door open and close somewhere behind him. Small, hurried footsteps approached. Then he saw Eva's beautiful face leaning over him. Your family will be here shortly, she whispered. She left him there. The room had low lights and mournful music came over the loudspeaker. A door opened and he heard a number of footsteps and mumbling, but he didn't hear any crying. Maybe Gail hadn't made it. Why wasn't she here on time? Where the hell was she? She was probably too distraught to enter immediately. Mrs. Dowderly, a familiar voice said from somewhere off to Frank's right, a voice that had moaned in his ear and screamed his name in pleasure just a week ago. Alice? It never occurred to Frank that Alice would attend the funeral. He had gone through great pains to keep Gail in the dark about Alice. One thing Gail insisted on was his loyalty, and he wanted her to make sure that she thought that she had it. You must be Alice, he heard Gail say. She sounded like she was smiling. I'm sorry for your loss, Alice said. Her voice broke on the words, your loss. That was the first sign of sadness Frank had heard all day. And I'm sorry about the affair. It's okay, honey, Gail said. Just exactly what Frank figured she'd say. She was just nice like that. Frank was a dog. Frank couldn't believe his ears. All he had done for Gail, and she could stand up at his funeral and talk about him like that. And how in the world did she find out about Alice? He sure as hell didn't tell her. Honey, he slept with everything in a skirt. Tell her, Bill, Gail said with a small laugh. He was quite the ladies' man, Bill said in a matter-of-fact tone. Well, he's no longer with us, Gail said sweetly, so why don't we try to reflect on his good qualities? Bill knew better than to talk about Frank. As soon as the medication wore off, Frank vowed to kick that two-faced, bald-headed sucker's ass. One minute Frank was listening to the laughter of all the mourners, and the next he was being wheeled away. He heard a voice beside him. Give him another shot, the female voice said. Open your eyes, Mr. Donnelly. When he opened his eyes, he saw Eva and a big white dude standing over him. Before he could say a word, he heard the chime of an elevator. The guy wheeled him onto the elevator. You didn't follow the rules, Mr. Donnelly, Eva said. What's happening? His tongue was thick. He could barely understand what he just said. Your check bounced, Mr. Donnelly, Eva said pointedly. Her voice was hard and raspy as she waved the check he'd given her earlier in his line of vision. Huh? Frank felt the white guy tugging on him and taking his clothes off. What? Bounced? Bounced. She folded her arms across her chest and rolled her eyes at him. Bill is taking care of your wife, Mr. Donnelly, Eva said. What? What do you mean? Frank was surprised when he was able to move. He actually felt like himself again. He actually felt like himself again. He bolted upright. Eva held the check he'd given her closer to his confused eyes. This check is drawn on Terrence Weaver's account, she said bitterly. Terrence Weaver was Frank's new identity. There had to be money in that account. There's $25 million in that account, Frank's voice echoed in the small, dismal area where they had wheeled him. He sat naked on a hard metal table where the white dude had dumped him from the casket. The guy stood by him, and Eva stood directly in front of him with a scowl on her brown face. There are no funds available in this account. What the hell are you talking about, bitch? Naked as a jaybird, he jumped off the table. The guy caught him by the arm. Bill transferred the money into this account. He struggled against the strength of the goon as he
he struggled against the strength of the goon as he digested the reality that Bill had lied to him. Call my wife down here, Bill, Frank said suddenly, soothed by the fact that Gail would pay. Gail would pay Eva, and then he'd be free of this muscle-bound man who held him in a death grip. Your wife isn't as gullible as you would like to believe, Mr. Dollarly. Eva narrowed her eyes at him. My wife will do whatever I tell her, Frank said, as the guy dragged him across the room. For the first time, he realized that he was sweating. The guy was sweating, and there were sweat stains on Eva's soft pink jacket. Not anymore, Eva said. She is the one who paid for the cremation.